You are standing in a room where everyone has agreed to be sad together. A coworker's flight got cancelled. A cousin is describing a parking ticket like it is a war crime. A stranger online is typing in all caps about something that will not matter by Thursday. And somewhere behind your ribs, a joke is forming. Not a gentle one. A dark one. The kind you know you are not supposed to say out loud. You clamp your jaw shut. You stare at the floor. Your shoulders start to shake and you pray nobody looks over. Because if they do, they will see it on your face. That flicker of a smile in a room that has decided smiling is a crime. And when someone finally catches you, their expression changes instantly. Confusion. Then judgment. Then that specific look that says, "What is wrong with you? How can you possibly find this funny?" Here is what nobody in that room understands. You are not broken. You are not cold. You are not missing whatever gene makes normal people cry at the right moment. You are running a piece of software installed decades ago, tested in fire, and it still works better than anything the modern world has replaced it with. In this video, we are going to take that smirk apart piece by piece. We are going to trace it back to the exact conditions that built it, walk through the actual neuroscience of why your brain rewards you for it, and by the end you are going to understand something important. That laugh you keep apologizing for was never a flaw. It was a survival skill so effective that an entire generation was raised on it without anyone ever writing the manual down. Let's start with a memory. Not a statistic. A memory. Picture a kid, somewhere in the late 70s or early 80s, flying off a bike on a stretch of cracked asphalt. Skin opens up on one knee. Blood mixes with gravel. No parent comes running. No one kneels down to ask how that made you feel. Instead, 3 other kids on bikes circle back, take one look at the damage, and start laughing so hard they can barely stay upright. That is the moment. Not the fall. The laughter after the fall. Because in that split second, the kid on the ground has exactly 2 options. Lie there and cry alone, or decide the bleeding knee is actually kind of hilarious and laugh along with everyone else. Most of them chose the second option. Not because they were told to. Because crying alone on an empty street felt worse than the wound itself. Psychologists have a clean, clinical name for what happened in that kid's brain in that instant. Cognitive reappraisal. Strip away the jargon and it just means this. The brain took something painful and, in real time, rewrote its emotional meaning. The blood was still there. The sting was still there. But the story around it flipped from disaster to punchline. And once that flip happens enough times, on enough scraped knees, on enough merry-go-rounds that spun fast enough to launch a small child into a hedge, the brain stops waiting to be told how to feel. It starts deciding on its own. And it decides, almost every time, that laughing hurts less than sincerely suffering. Now here is where it gets heavier, because the playground was never really the problem. The playground was just training. This generation grew up watching cartoons on Saturday morning, full color, full sugar, full joy, and then sitting through a commercial break that told them the ozone layer was disappearing, that a nuclear exchange was a live possibility, that their Halloween candy might be hiding razor blades. Picture being 7 years old and absorbing that Whiplash as completely normal. Bright plastic toy in one hand, quiet dread about global annihilation in the other. Nobody explained the contradiction. Nobody softened it. It just arrived, over and over, until a young mind had to find some way to carry 2 opposite truths at once without collapsing under the weight of either one. You cannot sincerely, fully feel the size of that fear at 7 years old and still function. So the brain does something remarkable. It builds distance. Not denial. Distance. And the tool it reaches for is sarcasm. Sarcasm gets treated today like a personality flaw, like something you should be working on in therapy. But looked at honestly, sarcasm is closer to armor. It lets you stand next to something terrifying or absurd without letting it actually touch your nervous system. When the news said the world was ending, joking about it was not denial. It was damage control. It was a way of saying, I see the fire, I am not going to let it burn me from the inside while I stand here watching it. That instinct did not stay contained to childhood. It shaped an entire sense of humor. It is why the comedy that this generation grew up on was never soft. It mocked institutions instead of protecting them. It assumed, correctly, that a lot of the adults running things had no idea what they were doing either, and that laughing at that fact was more honest than pretending otherwise. Now let's pause here for a second, because this is worth sitting with. If you have ever felt guilty for laughing at the wrong moment, if you have ever been told your humor is inappropriate, too dark, too much, I want you to consider something. Maybe you were never inappropriate. Maybe you were the only person in the room who had already survived something that taught you laughter is not the opposite of pain. It is what you do after the pain, so it does not own you. Let's move into what is actually happening inside the brain, because this part is not opinion. This is measurable. When a normal stress response kicks in, the amygdala fires first. That is the brain's ancient alarm bell, and it does not think, it just reacts. Cortisol floods the body. Some people cry. Some people spiral. Some people write long, furious messages they will regret sending. But there is a different pathway available, and it runs through the prefrontal cortex instead, the part of the brain responsible for logic, pattern recognition, and complex problem solving. To turn a disaster into a joke, your brain has to do something genuinely athletic. It has to recognize the tragedy, notice the absurd angle hiding inside it, create distance from the raw emotion, and construct a punchline, all within a second or two. That is not a small brain doing a lazy thing. That is a sophisticated brain doing a very fast, very difficult thing. And here is the detail that tends to surprise people. Research on people who lean toward dark humor consistently links it to higher verbal intelligence and greater emotional stability, not less. Read that again. Stability. The smirk in the crisis meeting is not evidence of someone falling apart. It is often evidence of someone who is, at that exact moment, the calmest person in the room. Which brings us to the place where this all gets painfully real. The office. Picture the server crashing 20 minutes before a major presentation. Everyone is spiraling. Someone is close to tears. And the person leaning back in their chair, sipping cold coffee, cracks a joke about the timing being almost impressive. To half the room, that lands as cold. Dismissive. Almost cruel. But look again. That joke was not ignoring the crisis. It was trying to drain the panic out of the room so people could actually think again. It was saying, out loud, without saying it directly, nobody is dying, the building is still standing, we can fix this. That is not the absence of empathy. That is empathy wearing a disguise nobody taught this generation to explain. The disconnect is this. Modern culture has decided that seriousness equals care, and lightness equals carelessness. But if you sincerely, fully absorb every bad headline, every conflict, every inconvenience with the same heavy weight, something in you eventually cracks. Sincerity, held constantly and without relief, is exhausting in a way most people never admit out loud. Humor is not the rejection of feeling. It is a pressure valve that lets feeling exist without becoming unbearable. So if this is landing for you, here is what to actually do with it. Stop apologizing for the laugh that shows up at the wrong moment. It is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that some part of you learned, early and the hard way, how to survive without falling apart every single time life handed you something ugly. Notice the people around you who use humor the same way. They are not being careless. They are often carrying more than they show, and the joke is the only socially acceptable way they know how to release some of that pressure without asking anyone to catch them. And the next time the room goes heavy, and a dark, inappropriate, perfectly timed thought rises up in your chest, let it out. You are not adding cruelty to a hard moment. You are doing what humans have quietly done for generations when the world got too loud to take completely seriously. You are refusing to let the chaos win by making it laugh instead. That instinct was never a defect. It was built for exactly this. And it is still working.
Like to learn more about human psychology? Like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe my channel now. Thank you for watching.